Welcome to The Other Side, Mississippi Today's political podcast. The Other Side lets you hear directly from the most connected players and observers across the spectrum of politics in Mississippi. From breaking news to political strategy to interviews with candidates and elected officials, we'll bring you facts, perspectives, and context that helps you cut through the noise and understand all sides of the story.
I'm Geoff Pender. I'm joined here today with my colleagues, Bobby Harrison.
Hey, Geoff.
And Taylor Vance.
Hey, Geoff.
And today we have a special guest. We have Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann,
Good to see
Republican.
You, Good to see all three of y'all.
Good to see you. Republican serving in his second term as Lieutenant Governor, was a longtime Secretary of State before that. And anyway, good to have you on. It's been a while since you've been on, and probably a lot of ground you want to cover.
Well, we've had a very busy year, and we're looking forward to another busy year. So we've got a lot of topics I think you'll ask me questions on, and we'll be happy to get into it.
Sure. One thing we might start out is we've had a little chat here before the mics went hot, but you were telling us that you think right now financially the state's in pretty good shape. Can you?
It is, and clearly it's in the best financial condition we've ever been in. The numbers, we've cut taxes by over $500 million. We paid off $1.2 billion in debt. We bonded back a little bit of that. Our education expenditures are $100 million pay raise, and then $200-something million this last year. That doesn't go to administration, goes straight into the classroom. We actually are building three new highway structures. Now, it's been a long time since we started building new highways, and I would remind you that there's no federal money in those. These are paid by the taxpayers of the state of Mississippi. The first three are all in North Mississippi, which are Highway 15 in Tippah County that goes to the largest manufacturer we have, Ashley Furniture. Highway 7 in Oxford area coming up from Water Valley, and then Interstate 55 in DeSoto County, which is bumper to bumper probably as we're having this conversation. All of those are paid for by the taxpayers. In the next round, as selected by MDOT, we got away from just political decisions and let MDOT set the priorities. And the next ones will be the Gluckstadt down here, which is also backed up, Gluckstadt to Madison. We're doing the I-10 on going over to Diamond Head in South Mississippi. We're completing the road from Gaucher up to the state highway there. We need to change the Flowers exit over in Warren County because they've added a lot to their to that industrial park they have there. So you're seeing these being paid with state dollars. That's why we're able to move quickly into doing things, because we actually allocated money to that. And we didn't forget maintenance. We put $50 million again more in maintenance. We put over $1 billion in maintenance and new highways in Mississippi in the last 3 years. So in addition to those, what I hope people will realize, this emergency road and bridge money that we give to counties, that saves people from having to raise their property taxes because we have fixed the bridge or doing the maintenance or whatever. That was $30 million last year, and it's been more than that in prior years. So when you look at our expenditures, we're investing in our children's future, our infrastructure, our debt, reducing our debt. You're seeing us do the things that, quite frankly, Ronald Reagan would be very pleased with, and I'm pleased the legislature does this. We've got good, solid leadership for the last few years, and it's now reflecting in our schools and our scores are up, those kinds of things. It's really a very good year, and we're anticipating a good year this year.
Governor, the legislative session is still a ways off, but it's going to be up on us before you know it.
Yeah, we're preparing for it.
And we talk. There's so many. It's going to be another big session, I assume, with a lot of big issues. And you mentioned the tax cut that is being phased in, $525 million. That's being phased in addition to a 2016 tax cut, I think it was.
About $42 million on the franchise business tax thing. Yeah.
So those two tax cuts are being phased in, but there's talk about another tax cut. You talked about a grocery tax cut at the fair. Talk about why you think that's important to do.
When I look at the tax structure of the state of Mississippi, it's balanced to some degree. We have an income tax, we have property taxes, and we have this grocery tax. When I looked at the income tax, I think we're ranked 16th, and there's 9 that don't even have income tax. And so I think we're doing good on reducing our income tax, and that's before we do these next 2 cuts that are coming in the next 2 years. Our business taxes are very competitive. Our grocery tax is not, and that really affects a lot of people. You hear these discussions now about inflation in the grocery business, and it's been about 20%. And I'm very concerned. When I go to the grocery store, I can just see it, what things used to be and what they are today. And I think that affects every Mississippian. I think we ought to reduce the grocery tax. That would be my first target coming up this year. When we get to talking about that, the fact that people have to expend those dollars like that on their grocery tax, it's very important, I think, for us to remember that is universal. That goes across every income level, everyone. So I think our next step really would be to reduce the grocery tax.
Have you done enough research on it yet? I mean, in the past, when there's been talk of reducing the grocery tax, I mean, going back to way back to Amy Tuck when she was lieutenant governor, so the municipalities expressed concern because they get a portion, the state reimburses a portion of that back to the municipalities. I mean, can you do that and make those cities and towns whole?
You can. That's just a calculation, Bobby, really. It's just a calculation. Excuse me. When you look at whatever they're getting right now, you could make a computer calculation as to how that would grow in the future so they won't get frozen. And you could do that without too much. As we go through how much is expended on groceries, we could make the same calculation on an increased grocery price that we do today. So I think we can make our cities and counties whole. What we want to make sure is our people can keep food on the table.
And that would include a growth factor.
Yeah.
I know that's one thing they've worried about before. You say reduce.
You would just calculate it. You would calculate it just as
2%
if, right,
or
whatever it was before, whatever they were getting 0.18 or 2%, whatever that number was, it would be calculated the same no matter what. As prices increased, their dollar amount would increase.
And the state would pay that likely out of other sales tax or?
Well, out of whatever money that we have for elsewhere. As we reduce taxes, we have to make judgment decisions. But I think we can reduce the grocery tax
Can we eliminate it?
I don't know about that. I think we can reduce it significantly. I have, we've been cautious about our reductions, and you're seeing them being phased in. And I think you'd phase in the grocery tax reduction. When we get to zero in the income tax or zero in the grocery tax, I can't predict that out that far. But I don't want to raise the sales tax like was proposed by the House the last time by 2.5%. I don't want to do that. So I think we can do a gradual reduction, and as we go along, we have the funds. Maybe it gets to zero. I don't know. The first thing to do is take the first step, which is start to lower it now.
Yeah, the grocery tax is essentially a sales tax on food, and it's the same as a general sales tax, which is 7%, which is the highest in the nation for a statewide tax of that.
And that's
kind.
why it's drawn my attention. That and the fact that the cost of groceries has skyrocketed, Bobby. There's a national debate about price fixing or something like that. I'll let that go forward. But regardless of whatever you think, prices at the grocery store, when you go to checkout, either self-checkout, which I try to do, or and I'm
Not
successful.
me, man.
Yeah, I'm successful.
I don't work there.
The produce throws me off sometimes.
I want to tell you, I used to bag groceries at A&P.
I did too.
And so when I worked at the A&P back then, I remember distinctly talking to the managers. You get to know these people and everything. And I taxed groceries, and we would take them out to the people's car, and they would give us like 10-cent tip. It was a big deal to haul the groceries out. Those days are gone. But I remember talking to the manager about what the margins were. There's not a lot of margins. It's based on volume, really. So I think the overall margin in the country is like 1.6% on groceries, and that was about what it was at the A&P, 50 years ago. So I'm thinking that that margin is being pushed by the economics of the cost of raising chickens and the cost, you go down the whole stream, the cost of inputs by my farmers into growing corn and soybeans. All those inputs are going up, so the price is gradually going up, and that's being reflected at the grocery store. But there's not a lot of margin in it. I mean, you don't see everybody saying, I want to start a grocery store. So it's very, very difficult. I anticipate that a lot of those costs are frozen in there, and we need to be lowering the grocery tax.
Switching topics just a little bit, it appears that one thing the legislature will have to address next session is a lot of redistricting. The Chancery and Circuit Court districts, I think, have to be redistricted before the state Supreme Court will have to step in and do it. A federal bench trial in Oxford just concluded about the state Supreme Court districts, and we're waiting on the judge to rule on that. But a 3-judge panel recently determined that the legislature needs to redraw some Senate and House districts, or to tweak some of the districts. I'm just curious if y'all are preparing for that already, or where are y'all at as far as that?
Two things. Let me start first by saying I was very disappointed in the ruling. Now, they said we didn't gerrymander the districts. That's correct. And in DeSoto County, for example, they have an African-American House member, an African-American Senate member, an African-American sheriff, and they want us to go redistrict DeSoto County. So I was disappointed in that, to be upfront about it. That being said, last year the Senate redid the districts. We have filed our bill. Senator Bryce Wiggins did that. The House did not want to take that step. I thought we should have. I thought we should have gone forward and reached a conclusion about redistricting and that, because now it's been thrown in with all this other that we have to have if in fact this 3-judge panel ruling stands. So with that, we're going to have the normal concerns. The plaintiffs, I went to one of the sessions with the 3-judge panel, sat in on it, and the plaintiffs said they anticipated about a third of the Senate would be redistricted. Because you can't just go redo DeSoto and not affect six or eight.
You got to shift the other districts.
It's like pieces of a puzzle. Same in Hattiesburg area. So you could see, according to them, anywhere from 18 to 20 Senate districts. Of course, nobody knows what those Senate districts are. So, as you would anticipate yourself, my senators are going to be concerned. Am I going to be redistricting? Do I have to start raising money for another election? I just got elected. What's my status? And I think it is disruptive to the Senate session this year, and I'm sure to the House. I'll let a speaker speak to that. But I think it will be difficult. We have these other major decisions to be made, and human nature being what it is, they're worried about, am I going to be one of the ones that needs to be out campaigning and needs to be raising money and needs to be doing this or that or the other. So I think it'll be disruptive to the session and will be a drag or an anchor on matters that we'll try to accomplish. On the redistricting, the Senate plan is out there. Senator Wiggins, I think, did a good job.
Now you're talking about judicial redistricting.
Judicial redistricting, yeah.
There's
Senate
a lot of
plan
moving
is
parts
out
on
there.
redistricting right now.
Yeah, there are. The judicial redistricting, the Senate plan is out there, and we proposed it, and there were a lot of give and take on that. So I think that's our plan. And I was specific when talking to Senator Wiggins when he was told by the House that they weren't going to do it. I said, well, you need to file ours because I want ours on record to start with. I don't want to start with a clean slate, how we're going to redistrict all of Chancery and Circuit Clerks in Mississippi. So our plan is out there. I hope they'll either accept that or we'll get into negotiations and complete it quickly in the session. That would be preferable to me. On the other, you're right, we got to wait on the Supreme Court districts and whatnot, those redistricting efforts, but I'll let that play as it may. But
so y'all are going to be making putting a lot of puzzle pieces together.
Very difficult because we have 4 senators in DeSoto County, and if you move any of those around, you probably hit the 3 or 4 that touch them. So it becomes very, very difficult. You start getting into other counties. When you represent multiple counties, sometimes you wonder if you represent any one of them. So if you're just a minority, life being what it is, if they only have, 200 votes or 500 votes in one section of a county, they're probably going to spend most of their time representing the one where most of their voters are. So I don't like to split all those up, and I think we had a very, I thought that Senator Kirby and our Senate, and I believe, as far as that goes, I've had both Republicans and Democrats say we thought we were fair. So whatever, we'll have to deal with it.
Governor, to shift gears yet again, another issue that I know you talked about a lot last session and tried to push some legislation that didn't make it, but campaign finance reform. You felt pretty strongly about that.
I do.
About this time last year, is that still a big concern?
It is, and maybe that's the only good thing that will come out of the fact that we have to redistrict is that people need to realize that they need to know who gave the money, and transparency. We, according to the individuals involved, have no one to enforce anything.
Right.
Now you can talk.
Yeah,
the Attorney General
that's a
says
huge
she
issue.
couldn't. The Secretary of State said he couldn't. The Ethics Committee said he couldn't. So we had this circle of denial, and
That's a good term for it.
so
I guess.
I think we need to have somebody responsible. Now, who that is, I think will come out in the negotiations this year, and we do need to know who's putting our money in. The Attorney General raised a question about the corporate contributions being limited to $1,000 in a Mississippi, but not Mississippi corporations, and so there's some loose ends that may need to be cleaned up. But one of them for sure is the transparency and who's responsible, and I don't want to leave that another year. I think people need to know that. And as you know, this year we put with the Secretary of State, my old spot, about $4 million or maybe a little bit more to fix the computer system where you
Maybe
could,
get a searchable.
where you get a searchable
database.
engine. So we funded that with the Secretary of State this year, so that's a good step forward. But we have to get somebody responsible and accountable for enforcing our campaign finance reforms, and we need to know who's paying the money.
Well, and bigger picture, just to back up, part of this is we've seen, and I guess maybe we were insulated longer than some other bigger states, but we're seeing big money pour in further and further down ticket, right? I mean,
You are,
millions.
and to Taylor's point there, next year, if we have Senate elections in Mississippi, whoever lost the national elections is going to be looking at us. And it's nothing for them to come put $100,000 in a Senate rate in Mississippi, which is twice probably what anybody else would raise. If they've got a target down here, you could see an influx of contributions one way or the other as we go through the redistricting for the House and the Senate, because there's not any other game in town next year, really. Most everything is settled up. House and the Senate, I think most of those will be settled. And so they'll go play where there's competition, and that would be in Mississippi. And that's just another reason to have our campaign finance laws accurate and disclosable and transparent and responsible, who's responsible to enforce them.
Judicial races can be a big
Yeah,
campaign.
they're not.
Seeing some
they're,
money pour
they're-
in right now.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, right, Taylor?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So you'll see those, and we saw it in my campaign, $1.4 million, and we still don't know. Those things were formed like July the 15th and went out of existence the week after the election. So who knows where that money came from or even went. So I think that's a key thing for us to do early on. I do anticipate whoever's in power. There's so much money now in these races that they will come make contributions in Mississippi.
Governor, before you move on, I gotta just compliment you. You made me jealous. That was quite a turn of phrase there.
What's that?
Circle of denial.
Hey, we're going to use that, I think. Circle of denial.
Yeah,
Hey, I'm a
good
state
one.
employee, so everything I say is public.
You
Y'all
make
have
me
at it.
jealous. You can't let a podcast go by without asking about Medicaid expansion. Without getting into all the nuances of what happened in 2024 session, I think it's going to be an issue again in 2025. And would the outcome of the presidential election in some way impact what y'all
Yeah, I think you're right about that, Bobby. Obviously, President Trump approved a work requirement during his term, and then President Biden withdrew all of those except for Georgia's, who has had real problems with their rollout. They're not necessarily the methodology that we want to follow. But if President Trump is elected, and hopefully will be, if he's elected, then I think our path forward for a work requirement becomes quite easy. I think it'll pass, and all these requirements, well, we don't know whether it's going to pass or not, all of those things that went on this year. If he's not elected and the Harris team is elected, then we're probably going to be in the same spot we were this past year with trying to see whether or not a work requirement or some, it's not a full work requirement because we gave credit for individuals who had children less than 5 years old, staying at home, were injured. There were several other groups that are taking care of a senior citizen or whatever. There were several different groups that could get into that work requirement. If the president Trump is re-elected, I think our path forward would be really clear about getting that approved.
Do you feel you can, taking the work requirement aside for just a second, I know it's hard to do you think you can get the full 138%, the full Medicaid expansion package through your Senate?
We had, there were two aspects to it, if you remember. One was what they call like the Better program that covered from, there are so many fluctuations in dollars, so I hesitate to be careful about family of four, and that moves around a lot. But basically, above $31,000, you basically paid very little copay, and part of the discussions last year was to pick up some of that copay too. So you, at a certain level, you wouldn't have any expense above 31 for a family of four that made $50,000 or something like that. So there were discussions about that last year. I don't know whether that will continue. Some of the subsidies go away next year, so we have to be cognizant of that. And as you know, the governor's position has been the same. He's going to veto whatever you send over there. So his position has been quite consistent. So I'm once we get through the presidential election, I think some of these things will come more clear for us. My goal in this has always been, if you're working here, I want you to continue to work. And I think that those working people who don't have insurance from their employer should have the ability to have primary health care here. Now, the marketplace will take care of whether an employer offers. Rates have gone up significantly. Hourly rates and others have gone up significantly. And if an employer offers you X dollars per hour and health insurance, that is an attractive package. So I think the market itself will cover this fear that we're going to flee to this work requirement in a Medicaid and in a Medicaid type situation. So I'm not so much fearful of that, but I do think it's important. Now, these are people that are making $15 an hour, $16 an hour.
Working hard.
And working hard, and jobs, some of the jobs you may not want to do yourself. And so I just feel like that's important. We've made a lot of steps, as you know, considering pregnant women when they begin, when they are pregnant, giving them health care coverage. We did that this year. The 340B stuff we did this year. There'll be more, I think, of discussions about that. But I think this is part of our health care plan. When the election is over, like I said, I think President Trump's election will end up being a clear path forward for us.
Governor, sort of a related topic, and one that you've talked about a lot over the years: workforce participation.
Mm-hmm.
Seen, I think, some recent numbers, and we're not moving the needle, it doesn't appear, or perhaps it's even ticking back the wrong way a little.
Yeah.
It seems like, not for lack of focusing on the issue, some policy changes, and a pretty good bit of money spent on it to this point, but where's that headed? Why haven't we seen results yet?
We've seen a little uptick here to 54.2 or so this last little bit. We were down to 53 something. We're still easily somewhere between 5 and 8 points below where we ought to be. Now, so that gets back.
And this is the number of
Labor force
adult
participation
age.
rate, as you know, is the number between for example, between 16 and 64 that are eligible to work that are actually working. This is not the employment rate, of course, which is a different calculation. But this particular solution for this, to me, in some instances, is long-term. For example, we now have 6,000 children in kindergarten, public kindergarten, where our third grade reading aid is good. We're now 30th in the country. We're devoting a lot of money, and you're right, hundreds of millions of dollars to our education component. And as they go through that, there's certain things in education I want to do this year. As we go through that, we should have, A plus B plus C equals employment. So we should have people that are better educated and can attain a higher rate of return, a better economic life, earn more. So where it becomes more profitable for them to actually work than not work. So we want to make sure that we can get our educated workforce up to a level that the labor force participation rate goes up. Now, that being said, it's a very long-term thing. It's not a quick fix. But this year, I'd like to see last dollar tuition free for community colleges. I want those kids that get to school age, get their junior and senior year, to have no barrier to going forward. Real success story for us, Geoff, is the fact that we have these individuals that are working with our people as they are graduating. And so we have, which are mainly former teachers actually, they're coming along and working with each of them. I think we're up to like 180 or so of those now. And I'm very pleased with them taking these young men and women and giving them a path forward to an economic life. So we want to continue to help them at that level. So I'm thinking that if we go through the education, it will produce a higher labor force participation rate. The one thing that we can't do, of course, is I can't do individual initiative. I can give you every opportunity, but you've got to want to raise your own status in life and as our parents did, do better than their generation and the next generation. And so our goal is to have our children have every opportunity to do that. And if they don't do that, it would be because they just ignored everything that we've set up for them. And I'm very hopeful that the whole scenario from kindergarten all the way to community college will give our young people an opportunity to have a very strong economic life.
I wanted to ask you about community colleges. I know you, I think, don't like the term, and most people would be turned off by the term free community college. But do you mind explaining what your specific proposal is? And, if
it would be, yeah.
Go ahead.
It'd be last dollar, like you'd apply for your Pell Grant or other things that you'd apply for, or you may have a Rotary scholarship, or whatever age you had coming in. And then we would pick up the last dollar for you. So you would have applied for your scholarships and whatnot. And of course, the community colleges, some of them are already there.
Right.
I mean, up in North Mississippi, there's several of them, you don't pay anything to go. So parts of our state have already gotten there and other parts aren't. And that's never a good recipe for us to go forward. So I think that this will equal out the playing field. And the way we would calculate that, if you're already making a contribution, then you couldn't take advantage of this if you take your money back. Right. So if they say, well, counties are already putting up a sufficient amount of money to pay for this free community college system, that money would stay with the community college so they could use it for, maybe childcare.
Sure.
Or some other things, transportation, some other things that may help them increase their enrollment capabilities. So we're hopeful about that, and I have meetings with community college. I've already been over once with all of the presidents, and hope to go back again this year going into the session. I saw a huge increase in Tennessee, kids going to community college after they did this, and so I think that's a good roadmap for us to look at.
Yeah, I would assume the community college presidents are receptive to this. I mean, it would likely lead to more students in their college.
Yeah, and I would too. You know, there's the ones that already have this scenario are less enthusiastic about it because they've already achieved that goal.
Right.
But we want all of our community colleges to have that same goal that some of them have already adopted in North Mississippi.
And would this apply to like trade programs like welding and things of that nature, not just academic?
Yes, and you need to remember about 95% of the kids who graduate from community college stay in Mississippi. And that's not the same with our university system, as you well know. Not all of them stay in Mississippi, but our community college kids stay here. And I had the honor of speaking down at Jones College graduation, and it was nice. And they had 600 of them that graduated, and I took time to visit with, just shake hands with every one of them actually, but I took time to visit with them about where are you going, what are you doing. Almost every one was staying in Mississippi. Now, they may be doing welding or maybe going to Ingalls, or they may be doing this, or they're going to Southern for an advanced degree for education. But these first 2 years, this enabled them to see a light to get a collegiate degree or to get a job. And I think the community college system is a real asset for us. And I think to allow kids to get there, as some community colleges already are, without having to pay tuition. Now, they're still going to have to work, they're going to have to eat and live somewhere. But a lot of them, we have so many of these, they can commute in and out. So I'm hopeful, very hopeful.
Governor, moving away from policy for a second, there seems to be a sort of a fission, a fracture in the Republican Party in the state. You have the Attorney General and the auditors kind of going back and forth at each other, and I think the chair of the state Republican Party was kind of upset with what the auditor wrote in his book about him. Where do you stand in all that?
Well, I'm just trying to do my job. I mean, so I'm going to let them go. But, frankly, I'm disappointed in the state auditor. His series of decisions, when he came out, Bobby, he really hadn't been in the private sector much. He was picked by Governor Bryant as a very young professional to lead the state auditor's office, and I think everybody was pretty excited about that. And the vision that we'd have young leadership coming on who've been well educated and whatnot. But a series of decisions have put that in some gray area, and you start with the one to use the local DA versus the federal government.
On the welfare investigation.
Right, because quite frankly, the local DA, the state gives 2 assistant DAs over there. We're paying for the assistant DAs because they don't have enough money. They have more cases filed, Bobby, than they're settling in the court system over here. So we've tried to help them out with a minority court over here, a court that would be a lesser jurisdiction, basically like a county court type thing, municipal court. And so we're doing all of that. So the odds of them being able to handle this or having the people to do this or the longevity to do this, and not respecting whatever is going on over here right now in regards to that, that is a difficult decision. The federal government has more money and more people. Their conviction rate's about 90-something%, and it's not the same over here in Hinds County. So I thought that was a difficult decision that when it was first made. There was some testimony in Congress about the TANF schedule. I don't know that you really had to do that, to put a spotlight on us, even though we did some things that were incorrect and money was misspent and people have pled guilty to a crime. I don't see the necessity of the book. We have been sued for slander on 2 different occasions. The Attorney General was right. If I have a car wreck, she can't represent me, and my car wreck is a personal thing. So you just keep going, and then there's been a $2 million spent that wasn't appropriated by the legislature, was taken out of funds over here to get somebody to judge the job that basically the auditor should be doing about what's waste and abuse over here. So I think this name calling, it's just kind of sophomoric. and it just doesn't add anything to anybody, and it makes you look, sophomoric in a way. So I think clearly we have been disappointed in where we are. That doesn't mean that you can't go forward and improve as you go along or whatever, but it's just been disappointing. And that's led to a lot of these fractions between Attorney General not representing the auditor and feelings back and forth. So I don't think the book should have probably been written after public service was completed.
Or maybe after the investigation was completed.
That would be even better. So I don't know where all of that's going. You see the same things I do, but obviously we've had other issues over there. So I'm just disappointed. I think I was hopeful that we'd have a team approach to this. Our Republican Party is, I think all of us have our compasses due north, and we're, like I've already discussed with you, we've cut taxes and built infrastructure and educating our children and paying off our debt, and we're doing the things we should be doing. And this shows difficulties when we should be all working together.
Well, you see this, and you said in the Neshoba County Fair, and you said before that you wanted, after your term as lieutenant governor is complete, that you want to stay in public service. Does that kind of this division you see, does that kind of make it even more important from your perspective that you stay in the process, so to speak? I don't know if to ask that properly, but I think I'm focused every day. We spend a lot of time down here. I drive my truck to the Capitol every day, and I spend a lot of time getting this state and my vision for where we ought to be in the next few years. I have 8 grandchildren, and I want to build my state so that they want to live here and raise their children here. And when we get into these mundane name callings or whatever, that deteriorates from our opportunity to make good decisions about what the long-term vision is, which is to have our state be a place that our children want to live in, and they want to stay here and raise their families here, and our culture's here. We have great culture. We have water. We have good industries coming here. The AI thing will be a tremendous asset, Amazon, for generations to come. So we need to be focused on what's the most important things for us. And to me, as you know, that's been education and these infrastructure things and decreasing our taxes, those kinds of things. So I think that's the most important. When you get outside of that, you start to lose a little emphasis, lose a little ability to move forward. And I'm concerned about that. Not in the long term. I think the best thing you can always do is to do your job. Just do the job. People have hired me to do a job. They've hired me repeatedly, Secretary of State, now Lieutenant Governor, to do a job. And when that job is over, then I go right back to being a member of society, just like ex-presidents or ex-governors or ex-senators or anybody. So you just need to realize how lucky you are to have input into public policy that will affect people long term. And so I see that vision. I want to work on it this next year or two. And if we're still healthy and people still want me to work for them, and I'll keep working for them.
Governor, we've asked you a lot of questions, covered a lot of ground. Is there anything we've not addressed that you would like to talk about today?
I'm really concerned about 2 things. One, you see the book over here about chronic absenteeism and about cell phones. Now, chronic absenteeism ballooned during the actual COVID break to like 28%. That means 1 out of our 4 children are not in school. So if they're not in school, if their seat's not in the seat, how are they going to learn anything? During COVID, we had this remote learning, and I sat in on half a dozen or 10 of remote learnings. I would go into the class and just tag in and watch what was going on. And you had kids sitting up in bed playing with their stuffed animals and other kids fighting. And so you had all kinds of different things. So I don't know that was an effective way to deliver. The best way is to have them in school. Not having them in school was very was very concerning to me. This next year, we want to increase the salaries for our truancy officers at the schools. I've talked with the superintendent about moving from the Department of Education control down to the local school boards. I've met with a number of different ones from Ripley to Van Cleve last week. I was at Van Cleve High School last week, which is an A school and doing some really good things. And then the second part, the first part of that, we need to make sure that our kids are in school. They need to be physically present. The second thing is they've got to be able to concentrate on what the teacher is attempting to teach them. And that is being severely affected by cell phone usage. And if you look at the significant increase that we have had in chronic depression among young girls and young men after these cell phones were put in. Now, Marshall County, to its credit, has banned cell phones during school. When I was in Van Cleve, they make them put them in basically a little holding sock during class, and they can use them at lunch. So different schools are taking different approaches to here, but we need to make sure that every one of our schools doesn't have a cell phone ringing while you're sitting in school learning. So I want to attack that this year, both of those, the chronic absenteeism and the utilization of these cell phones, which have produced significant more chronic depression and a whole bunch of other things among young people, and also have diverted them from interrupting their learning process. So I think you'll see us making a strong push towards that. And I'm asking my superintendents and my principals, what do you think about that? How should this be effective? All things are best local. What's working in Van Cleve doesn't necessarily work in Marshall County, and they ought to be able to pick their own solutions for those. But we need to make everybody aware that all the kids need to be in school, and the truancy officer needs to be knocking on the door. They have a process in Ripley where they actually watch these kids, and when they get 5 days chronic absentees, less than 10% or more of your school year missed. I think that's important, and they start calling the mom and dad, sending them a text, and go knocking on the doors. I think it's really important that we have that kind of intervention early on in the chronic absentee ballot. I have long been a proponent of the modified calendar. That keeps kids in a continuity. They're only going to miss school maybe 5 or 6 weeks in the summer or something. So they're pretty much going to school, getting a break in the fall, break in the spring, break in the summer. And it's giving your teachers some time to recharge their batteries, but also keeps these children in a continuity of learning. And I think that's important to this chronic absenteeism issue that we've got. So you should anticipate that we'll be working with the Department of Education on all three of those issues this next year. Well, you'll see beginning here in about 2 weeks a series of committee meetings. We started that when I first came in. I like those, and of course y'all now we video them so everybody can look at them or archive them. They can look at them. But we'll be looking at fiscal policy. We'll be looking at the labor force participation rate. We've got Nicole Boyd's hearings coming up on children and how we're addressing those, particularly adoption processes and going through child protecting services and some other matters. I was on the phone today with Senator Carter, who's doing some looking at small nuclear reactors for the state going forward. Those are out a few years, but we want to make sure that we're in the game for that, which would involve legislation, I anticipate. I want to look at most of these, when I go around, most of these city mayors have talked about the homeless situation and how they address that, and the Supreme Court just addressed it a little bit ago. So I'd like to see some of our group look at that in our fiscal policy, tax credits and others. We'll have some hearings on the structure of government, whether or not we need all the government we got or electing all the ones we elect. So you'll see some of that coming, I think. And just a general time to look at everything we're doing here. And that'll be coming in it'll last September and October, just about full time. And from those usually come decent legislation that we can propose to everybody.
All right. Well, Governor, we appreciate you visiting with us today, and hopefully maybe we can get back up with you when we get closer to session or after some of these off-season hearings.
Well, I'm, as you know, I'm always available for that. I think you represent all the people who can't sit at this table and ask me questions. So I try to be as available as we can about those kinds of things. And I like the transparency of video and all of our committee meetings and all that other. I think the more people know about what we're doing, the better off they can give input, meaningful input to us. Most of this will settle a little bit right the last couple of 3 weeks before the election, because most people will start to focus on that. But between now and then, I want to try to get all our hearings done and get prepared for next year. And then we'll see who the new president's going to be.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank
you,
y'all. It's
Governor.
good to see everybody.
As we cover the biggest political stories in the state, you don't want to miss an episode of The Other Side. We'll bring you more reporting from every corner of the state, sharing the voices of Mississippians and how they are impacted by the news. So what do we need from you, the listener? We need your feedback and support. If you listen to the podcast on a player like iTunes or Stitcher, please subscribe to the show and leave us a review. We also have an email in which you can share your feedback. That address is podcast@MississippiToday.org. Y'all can also reach out to me or any of my colleagues through social media or email. And as always, thank you for your feedback and support. Subscribe to our weekly podcast on your favorite podcast app or stream episodes online at MississippiToday.org/theotherside. For the Mississippi Today team, I'm Adam Ganeshow. The Other Side is produced by Mississippi Today and engineered by Blue Sky Studios. We hope you'll join us for our next episode.